Hi everyone, welcome back to my fight against the fraud. And this is how a Ford dealership forged my name, and this is me discovering the fraud and trying to hold them accountable. In this series, my goal is it's actually simple. It's to expose the dealership forgery and the auto finance fraud. I want to walk you through exactly how the forgery happened, the evidence I've uncovered, and the battles I'm fighting in court to hold them accountable with. Each episode is going to focus on one key piece of the puzzle because I think that the episodes will be too long and people will get bored. So this way I'm breaking it up into smaller episodes, if you will, and hopefully it'll keep you kind of engaged to where you can listen to everything without feeling like it's a 40-minute video. And once I finish telling the story about this, I'm going to start a new series. I'll probably call it something like Paper Crimes. That's where I'm going to break down the hidden system behind the auto loans and explain why the banks don't actually lend you money the way that you think they do, especially at a dealership. But instead they actually purchase the contracts from the dealership and how the dealership is actually the lender first. So that's a distinction that's very critical and it's something that every car buyer should understand. So now looking at this episode 2, this is where we're going to expose or share with you how I reached out to the Attorney General to investigate the fraud and forgery. I provided them as much information as I could, my copies of these contracts, including the forgery. And this is what the investigation basically yielded. So I just want to show it to you all in case you haven't heard yet. Here it is. Show you my screen. So this is through the Office of Investigative Services, Regulatory Monitoring Division. This was dated February 12th, and that's going to be important, especially in our next video. February 12th, Brett Stiles did the investigation. This investigation is kind of the brief, just the brief outline of what transpired real quick and what the dealership's saying that I'm trying to get a truck for free. However, on February 12th, Brett Stiles, he actually showed up to the dealership, met with the general manager, and he had already it looks like he'd sent the manager a copy of the complaint. So obviously the manager had an opportunity to stand up and say, oh, this is BS or whatever he wanted, or he could have admitted this happened and he just wants to settle the issue. But that's not what happened here. So throughout this report, I did block out their last names. I'm not trying to drag them down too much. I'm just stating the facts here. So, Paul made numerous lies in his defense, if you will, while communicating with the investigator. And it kind of starts up in here. So, Paul claims that he had an appointment set with me. Prior to the appointment, Paul was reviewing the application and accidentally sent the e-signed application to Ally. That means if this were true, which by the way it is not, my phone records will prove this in court, that they never reached out. We never had a phone call. There was no appointment set for September the 26th, 27th, 28th, or 29th. The first phone call I received was on September the 30th, which is the following Monday. But even if this was true, it says here, prior to the appointment that Paul claimed I had, he was reviewing the application and accidentally signed the application and sent it to Ally. Ally then used that application to process the loan for the vehicle. He claimed that I arrived the following day and signed. So that means, for factuality here, when I arrived was October the 1st. So then he's basically stating that September the 30th is when he accidentally signed, and then Ally did this, and then I arrived the next day. So he's basically saying September the 30th is when I was supposed to be there, but that's not true. The general manager said all the numbers on the applications never changed, and that's actually a lie because I actually researched all the numbers on page 2 of each risk, and they did change. Even though the total number came out the same, there are discrepancies in there, which is a huge issue. Lonnie the general manager basically said the second application was just a mistake. So they reached out to Paul, who's the business manager, but he oversees 2 dealerships. So he was over at the other location, placed him on speakerphone, and Brett identified himself. Paul said that he did not. Oh, this is funny. Paul said he was reviewing the application and he thought that he was saving the application when in fact he sent the application to Ally by accident. He didn't know this until the following day when he went to print the application and noticed it had already been processed. Sounds kind of funny to me. So Paul said he still had me come in and sign with a wedding signature, which I showed you on the first video. Paul blamed the system the dealership uses and how messed it up the system is. So when the investigator asked Paul if he or anyone reached out to Ally to stop the second application, knowing that it should not be used, Paul stated he did not, because he didn't know the application was sent until the next day and the loan was already approved. So it just doesn't make sense. Paul continued to say he told David, which myself, several times that the third application was one being used for the funding, basically. David found out about the 3 applications and filed complaints with Ally, Morries Ford, and the state of Michigan. Paul continued to blame the system and stated it was just a mistake. Brett left the dealership, made a few phone calls to other dealerships just to make sure his mindset was right, and they confirmed that no, you cannot accidentally sign somebody's name. You have to intentionally sign their name in every spot. This is not a blanket, just input the buyer's name everywhere. That doesn't work like that. So the investigator called Paul back, asked about the signature and who signed basically David's name. Paul said that I have talked with the dude. Okay. So Paul said he must have accidentally signed David's name to the document. And so Brett says this is the second mistake Paul made on this document. I asked Paul how long he's been in business. He said for 25 years, most of those as a finance manager. So that tells you that it doesn't matter how long they've been doing this finance position, they still intentionally create fraud. This was not an accident. He admitted to doing this. He claims it was an accident, but you can't do that. You can't make that many mistakes or that many accidents and claim it was an accident. So, the investigator just put it right here. Said, I do not believe Paul's story of making so many mistakes, especially after 25 years. That's crazy. And so the investigator said, I believe that when David failed to sign the application, Paul took it upon himself to do so and sign the application and sent it to Allied Bank. David arrived the next day. Paul had him sign a third application, and that's the reason for Paul telling David so many times that this was the document being used. Now, at the end of this, the dealership received a violation because they lied and they created forgery. And so the violation is D25-257-.249D, subsection D. Fraudulent act in connection with selling or otherwise dealing in vehicles. The dealership e-signed the second loan application and sent it to the finance company to process the loan without the customer's approval. Case closed. Now down here it says create new BCRD case, and he says yes. And that's the Board of Compliance Regulatory Division. And so they're a part of the state government that actually it's like an escalation. So Brett does the investigation, he submits his findings, and then it's up to the board what they decide to do, whether it's press criminal charges, come in and arrest Paul for the forgery, include monetary damages to the dealership as a fine, or even cancel their LLC, their license to sell cars. So there's a varying range of penalties that they could suffer because of this, and I don't know what those are yet. That's not came to my attention what they're doing yet. After that report was sent to me, I got this letter, and this is from the Secretary of State, Department of State. So the issue date was February the 13th, and keep that date in mind. February the 12th was the day that Paul admitted to forging my name in multiple spots and then submitting it to Ally for funding. And so this is just a proof, again, that the state's issued the fraudulent charge for signing the second loan application, forging it, without the customer's approval. So that's pretty powerful. It's always nice when you have the state Attorney General with having your back, because, man, trying to prove this stuff without it can be challenging. So that's why this admission from the state investigator is so important. It confirms the forgery wasn't just like an allegation on my behalf. It wasn't my word against the dealership's word. It was acknowledged by the dealership himself, the actual person who forged. He admitted to it that, hey, I did this, but it was an accident. But instead of fixing the problem, which they had opportunities to do, before it even got to me, they could have just called Ally Bank and said, hey, stop that funding. We want you to fund this one on October the 1st. But they didn't do that. And the reason why is because September 27th was 4 days prior, and they already received the ACH payment from Ally Bank, and they can't. I'm guessing the reason why they didn't reverse that is it would have created some issues in their system and with the state of Michigan. So instead of fixing the problem when they could have, they just they basically deny afterwards, and they wouldn't make things right with me, and so. But instead of fixing the problem, what happened next shocks me even more. It's crazy. The next episode, I'm going to show you how the dealership's own in-house counsel tried to cover this up by lying to the Department of Insurance and Finance for the state of Michigan. And that's a huge issue if you are an actual lawyer. Now, you can call yourself a legal counsel, I guess, if you work for a company. I don't know what the parameters are for that. But if he is an actual bar attorney and he made these lies knowingly, then there's going to be some real issues for him as well, aside from the dealership having to take care of this problem. So anyway, that's what I'm going to show you in the next episode. And hope you guys subscribe. I don't want you to miss out. And I hope you share this series with anybody who's contemplating going through a dealership to do financing. I recommend use your own bank. Use your own credit union. Do not let in-house financing happen at dealerships. So that's all I have for right now. You guys are always welcome to post any questions that you may have or email me directly from my page. In the meantime, looking forward to video 3, and we'll get that out to you as soon as possible.